So why specifically are we going to use IP addresses? Well, an IP address is a 32-bit address that's going to identify each device. Part of that address is going to identify the network portion of the address, and the other part of the address is going to identify the device that's on the network. The neat thing about that 32-bit address is we can change how many bits of that address correspond to the network and how many bits correspond to the host. And that's one of the true powers of an IP address. Case in point, the IPX address was actually larger. It encompassed the host portion, which just so happened to be your MAC address, and then the network portion was the remaining 16 bits. So you had a 64-bit address there. But it wasn't globally handed out, so there was no global entity to control the IPX addresses. Therefore, we didn't all switch over and run IPX. There was also no way to force the network address to certain sizes so we could summarize our addresses and make our routing table smaller with an IPX environment. So there was some drawbacks in a globally connected network with running IPX as our protocol of choice. The only other protocol that was close that would have actually competed with IP was, in fact, the OSI protocol with the NSAP addresses. The NSAP addresses being quite a bit larger than what we're used to dealing with IP addresses. And what we're going to see later is, as we switch from IPv4, which is a 32-bit address, over to the 128-bit version of IP version 6, you're going to see the difficulty it is to work with such large addresses and dealing with the hexadecimal and other things that comes in part there. So, again, why IP addresses? We're doing this so we can connect the whole globe using a uniform protocol, and we can interconnect to all the devices in the world via the internet and via the internet protocol. If you go back, though, to the history of IP, why was it actually created? And this was actually created by the Department of Defense in the United States. Now, the Department of Defense has a sub-branch that's not really a military branch, if you will, like the Navy, Marines, or Army or Air Force. It's a branch called DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Project Association, I think. I probably just totally hosed that acronym, but okay. DARPA projects, or the DARPA group within the DoD, is designed to give out projects for the general community, civilian community, if you will, to come up to solutions to specific problems. Remember, a few years ago, they had a really neat contest. It was $1 million prize if you could get a robot to go from Los Angeles to Nevada completely autonomously. So you can't remotely control the robot. The robot had to figure its way from Los Angeles to Nevada, to Las Vegas, really, over off-road and on-road terrain. Couldn't mess up the terrain. Couldn't be controlled by anybody. Had to figure itself, from one part of the country to the other part of the country, and whoever got there first won the $1 million prize. Now, the same DARPA group several years ago came up with a competition, if you will, or a project to create a communications protocol that could survive a nuclear attack. So if you imagine, if you have all of the communication centered in one location, the enemy is going to point all of his, nuclear weapons at that one location. You drop that, and all the communication stops. That could be, very detrimental to, a country's ability to create a military network with, uniform communications. So the IP project came out, and they were able to create a resilient network that could survive, a destruction of one of its nodes and reroute around it. The thing is that the military never classified the TCP/IP project. A small university out of San Francisco called Berkeley got a hold of it. They were working on AT&T's Unix and playing around with that in the classroom research facilities there, and said, "Hey, look, a free routing protocol." Threw in TCP/IP, and that was the beginning of the internet. First known as DARPANET, and then commercialized into the information superhighway. And we all have Al Gore to thank for that, right? I think.